the demon who trapped humanity with 7 riddles. Can you solve them? They say that everything in this world is governed by the law of karma. When evil is allowed to fester for too long, it doesn't just spread, it takes the shape of a demon. And if you think demons exist only in myths, then perhaps you've never heard the name Dambhikasur. He didn't rise from hell. He was born from human ambition. No one knows where he came from. But wherever he appeared, bloodshed and weeping would follow. He didn't burn down kingdoms or destroy fortresses like other monsters. He stole women, only the young, the beautiful, the ones who radiated pure light. He collected them like rare flowers, played with them, and when bored, ended their lives in silence. No one ever found their bodies. Dambhikasur's cruelty didn't lie in claws or fangs, it lay in his arrogance, which mocked the very laws of heaven. Kings, warriors, sages, even the most powerful mystics tried to stop him. But they all met the same fate, turned to stone. He was not immortal. But he was blessed by the gods, no force could kill him. Anyone who raised a weapon against him, whether of iron or sacred chance, would instantly be petrified. Frozen in failure, trapped forever in the form of a fallen hero. Why would the gods grant him such power? No one knows. Perhaps it was a divine test, to show that only wisdom and unwavering will can redeem the world. Dambhikasur himself would scoff. Want to kill me? Fine. Solve my 7 riddles. Get one wrong, and you'll turn to stone. 7 riddles. 7 locks. Most never made it through, they died or were petrified before hearing them all. The few survivors were left insane, muttering strange numbers and symbols in terror. Still, whispers claimed that each riddle peeled away a layer of his power. And perhaps, just perhaps, someone, either brave or desperate enough, could be the one to make it through. Across the kingdoms, Dambhikasur's name became a symbol of helplessness. No one fought. No one resisted. Mothers could only pray. Kings shut their gates. Sorcerers fled sacred lands or burned themselves to avoid being summoned in the dreams of the terrified. Once, he entered a sacred temple and took a young novice, not even 16. The villagers rushed to pray to their guardian deity. That night, a massive landslide buried the temple, a silent punishment, or maybe a divine surrender. Even the gods seemed powerless against Dambhikasur, or perhaps they were waiting for humankind to solve it on their own. Yet far away, under the shade of an ancient tree by a flowing river, a small flame still burned. Ujjain, land of wisdom, compassion, and justice. There ruled a king like no other, Vikramaditya, a warrior with the heart of a sage. He once defeated 12 forest bandits with sheer wit. He convinced a rebel kingdom to surrender not with a sword, but with words. He was called the King of Justice, even demons feared him. When Dambhikasur heard his name, he laughed. But perhaps, that laugh wouldn't last for long. In the home of one of Ujjain's wealthiest merchants, 2 brothers were preparing to take over their family's trade. The elder brother, Mahendra, was wise, composed, already married, and managing most of the business. The younger, Lakhna, was still youthful, passionate yet sensitive, often hiding his feelings behind silent glances. Life flowed peacefully, until one small moment quietly shattered Lakhna's world. One evening, like many before, they returned home after a long day of trade. On the front steps stood Mahendra's wife, Lakhna's sister-in-law, holding 2 water jugs. As always, she handed one with her right hand to her husband. The other, with her left hand, to Lakhna. Lakhna paused, He stared at that left hand stretched toward him. It had always been that way. But today, it struck deeper. Something cracked inside. That night, under the flickering oil lamp, Lakhna couldn't stop thinking. Am I just the extra in this family? Someone unworthy of respect? A shadow who merely helps but is never truly seen? The next day, he decided to test something. He switched places with his brother when they returned home. Now, Lakhna stood on the right, Mahendra on the left. Without looking, the sister-in-law handed the jug in her left hand to Lakhna again. The right hand, still for Mahendra. Lakhna's heart broke. No one meant harm. But it was clear. To them, he was always the one on the left. An afterthought. A symbol of pity. He raised his eyes and said quietly but firmly, "If I'm not worthy of receiving water from your right hand, then I have no reason to stay here." And he walked away. Mahendra chased after him, but Lakhna shook his head, tears in his eyes. "I won't return until I find someone who sees me as the most important person in their life. Someone who will hand me water with both hands, not as charity." And so, he left, carrying only a small bag, and a broken yet burning heart. He journeyed across villages, slept under trees, and ate dry bread offered by strangers. He didn't know where he was going, but with every step, he whispered, "I deserve more. I'm no one's left hand." Fate must have been watching. One evening, as the sunset lit the skies red, he arrived in Kanchipuram, a city haunted by an unspoken sorrow. There, Princess Chandrakala, known for her beauty, had fallen into a strange coma years ago. No healer had succeeded. The kingdom spent fortunes. All in vain. In despair, the king issued a royal decree. Whoever heals the princess may marry her, and shall inherit half the kingdom. Lakhna heard this in a roadside tea shop. He wasn't excited by power. He simply stared into the horizon and whispered, "Maybe, she is the one who will give me water with her whole heart." And with pure intentions, Lakhna walked toward the palace. Under the crimson twilight that bathed the white stone walls of Kanchipuram's palace, Lakhna approached the gates. Before him stood a world far removed from wanderers like him, a realm of luxury, status, and bloodlines. But there was nothing ordinary in Lakhna's eyes. They had seen loneliness and pain, and still held hope. That gaze made the gatekeeper hesitate. "I wish to see the king," Lakhna said calmly, yet firmly. "Who are you?" asked the guard. "Just a man searching for what it means to be offered water with the right hand." The strange answer startled the guard, and reached the ears of a minister passing by. He looked at Lakhna for a long moment, then gestured for him to follow. Soon, Lakhna was brought before King Chandrasen, ruler of the realm. The aging king's eyes were heavy with sorrow and exhaustion. "You wish to save my daughter?" he asked coldly, having heard the same from many before. "Sire, I dare not promise anything, only to try." The king sighed and was about to dismiss him, but those eyes, again, made him pause. There was something in this young man that couldn't be ignored. "What do you need to try?" the king finally asked. "I only ask for one night alone with the princess, in a room of complete silence. No one may enter. No lights. No sound. Only darkness, and truth." A strange request. But the king nodded. When hope runs dry, even pride can be sacrificed. That night, Lakhna was led into Princess Chandrakala's private chamber. She lay still, as if peacefully asleep. Her beauty was so delicate it made one afraid to even breathe, skin pale like moonlight, lips slightly parted, breath as thin as silk threads. No one knew what ailed her. Some physicians claimed it was a deadly wind. Some mystics said she was possessed. But all failed, leaving her trapped in a state between life and death. Lakhna sat on a wooden chair a few steps from her bed. He did not close his eyes, nor did he sleep. He simply watched her face, as if waiting for something to stir in the darkness. And then, right as the clock struck midnight, from her lips, a thin stream of black smoke emerged, twisting into strange shapes before solidifying into a serpent. Not an ordinary snake, this was a massive viper, over 7 feet long, scales dark as midnight, and eyes glowing blood red. The serpent didn't notice Lakhna. It slithered out of the room and vanished into the night forest. Lakhna froze. Sweat poured down his brow despite the cold air. But there was no fear in his eyes, only realization. Now he understood why no one had been able to cure her. This was no illness. This was a parasitic curse, a demonic spirit that had possessed the princess's body, feeding on her life force, night after night. Lakhna stayed awake until dawn, waiting. Just before sunrise, the snake returned, slipping through the door, slithering back onto the bed, and quietly re-entering her mouth, disappearing as if it had never existed. Only then did Lakhna fully understand, she was a vessel, and the demon was the shadow devouring her inner light. At first light, King Chandrasen burst into the room, face tight with anxiety. He didn't waste time on formality. His voice cracked like a thunderclap. "What did you see? Can my daughter be saved?" Lakhna knelt. "I understand now. If your majesty allows, I ask only for 3 things, a razor-sharp sword, a large barrel filled with dry sand, and 1 more night alone with the princess." This time, the king's eyes no longer held doubt, but the first spark of hope in many years. He didn't question further. He simply nodded. Lakhna looked toward the window where sunlight crept in, and whispered, "Tonight, it ends. Either the princess lives, or I die." As twilight descended, the last golden rays faded from the palace rooftops like a gentle farewell. The entire city of Kanchipuram fell into an unusual hush. Everyone knew this night would decide Princess Chandrakala's fate. Inside her chamber, where she had slept for years, Lakhna sat quietly in a shadowed corner, clutching the gleaming sword forged on the king's personal order. Beside him was a large wooden barrel, filled with fine, dry sand brought from the western desert, known for its power to seal spirits when burying objects. There was no moon that night. Only the wind, whispering through the shutters, as if foretelling something great. Each tick of the bronze clock echoed like a war drum. Lakhna closed his eyes, inhaled deeply. He did not pray. He did not call upon the gods. He whispered only, "Chandrakala, if I'm right, tonight I will bring you back." And just as the night before, at the 12th chime, the black serpent crept from the princess's lips. It hissed softly, scanning the room with those infernal red eyes. But tonight, Lakhna had changed his position. He hid behind thick curtains, leaving only a narrow slit to observe. As the serpent slid toward the door, Lakhna sprang out, and the sword sliced down like lightning. A horrific shriek echoed through the chamber. The snake couldn't escape. The blade, sharp enough to cut the wind itself, split the demon cleanly in 2. Black blood sprayed across the floor like inky venom. Without hesitation, Lakhna grabbed both writhing halves with his bare hands and threw them into the sand barrel. He slammed the lid shut and sealed it with a sacred talisman given to him by an old monk across the river. No cheers. No celebration. Only the stench of blood, and an eerie silence. Lakhna sat beside the princess's bed. For the first time in days, he exhaled deeply. "You're safe now," he whispered. At sunrise, just a thin line of light marked the horizon. King Chandrasen rushed in, no longer a monarch, just a father, desperate to know if his daughter was alive. He opened the door and froze. There, sitting up on the bed, was Chandrakala. Her eyes wide open, confused, like someone waking from a dream. She looked around and asked softly, "Father, where am I? Why does everything feel so strange?" The king said nothing. He dropped to his knees and hugged his daughter tightly. Years of grief broke loose like a flood. The most powerful man in the kingdom wept like a child. Chandrakala remembered nothing. To her, time had paused. But for her father, every passing minute had been a blade to the heart. Lakhna stood to the side, eyes red, not with pride, but relief. When calm returned, King Chandrasen turned to him, grasped his hand, and said, "You didn't just save my daughter. You saved my heart. You saved this kingdom from an eternal curse. From this day forth, you are my son-in-law and heir to half the realm." Lakhna paused, then knelt. "I ask only to take the princess as my wife, to love and care for her as she unknowingly saved me. But I do not wish for power." Once again, the king laughed through his tears. "Then you're more worthy than any crown bearer I've ever known. I give you my daughter not as a prize, but as a father's deepest gratitude." That day, the entire kingdom celebrated. Fireworks, songs, and joy filled the streets of Kanchipuram. But in Lakhna's heart, the most precious moment was not the wedding, not the gold, not the glory. It was when Chandrakala reached for his hand, with both hands, without hesitation. He had found the woman who didn't see him as the one on the left. He had found everything. But no one could have known that this newfound happiness was just the light before the storm. Without a word, he raised his hand, and in an instant, Chandrakala was lifted into the air like a weightless leaf. Her sister-in-law's scream tore through the square. But no one dared to look up. Everyone bowed low, as if awaiting the slash of fate. Dambhikasur vanished into the night, taking the princess with him. No one could stop him. When the terrible news reached Lakhna, he was at home, just having finished an offering to the gods in gratitude for a peaceful life. He froze in the courtyard, his face pale as if all blood had drained from his body. No words. No sighs. Just silence. He turned around and walked straight out the door. "The princess has been taken. It's Dambhikasur." The tearful voice of Mahendra's wife echoed, but Lakhna didn't hear it. There was only one sound in his mind. "No. This time, I won't lose her." For 3 days, he wandered through forests and villages, asking anyone who had ever heard the demon's name. Most refused to answer or begged him to go back. "You're still young. You have a beautiful wife. Why throw yourself at an immortal monster?" But Lakhna wasn't afraid to die. He was only afraid to live without Chandrakala. Then, one stormy night, just as he collapsed beneath a tree in exhaustion, he saw a faint flicker of light in the forest. He followed it, step by step, and before him appeared a small moss-covered hut, where an old man with flowing white hair and beard sat meditating in the dim glow of an oil lamp. This was no ordinary man. And perhaps, it was no ordinary meeting either. The small hut sat silently in the deep woods, nestled beneath the roots of an ancient Bodhi tree. Rain whispered through the night like voices from the spirit world. Lakhna, cold and weak with hunger, moved toward the flickering light, a lifeline pulling him through the dark. He gently pushed open the creaking door. Inside, the old man sat motionless, eyes closed, posture like a living stone statue. The lamp's light etched deep wrinkles into his face, as if carved by centuries. Lakhna dropped to his knees. He didn't speak. He didn't beg. He simply bowed, red eyes lowered like a man who had passed through 100 gates of despair. After some time, the old man opened his eyes. They were not cloudy with age, but clear, as if they could see straight through the soul. "Who are you?" His voice was calm, like the echo of an ancient bell. "My name is Lakhna, the man whose wife has been taken by the demon Dambhikasur." The old man gazed at him for a long while. Wind howled through the cracks of the door, adding to the gloom. Finally, he nodded. "I know. I saw a dream about you." Lakhna looked up, heart pounding. "Please, show me the path to his lair. Even if I must die, I will bring her back. I cannot live without her." "Die." The old man closed his eyes again, repeating the word like it came from the abyss. "Boy, Dambhikasur is not something a mere man like you can defeat." Lakhna clenched his fists. "Then if I abandon her, I am already dead." The old man sighed and gestured for him to come closer. "Very well. If your courage does not waver, I will tell you the truth about that demon." Lakhna leaned in, his heart beat loud in his ears. "Dambhikasur is no ordinary monster. He was once a man. A man. Yes. A man whose greed knew no bounds. He sold his soul to the gods in exchange for beauty, power, and immortality. He meditated for 1,000 years, passed through levels of deep asceticism, and was eventually granted a curse, that no one could kill him by force. Anyone who tried to use weapons, spells, or brute strength, would turn to stone instantly. There's only one way to destroy him, by solving the 7 riddles he keeps hidden as keys to his soul." Lakhna was stunned. 7 riddles. Yes. Each riddle holds a fragment of the soul he locked away to maintain his eternal existence. Answer them correctly, and he weakens. Answer all 7, and he becomes mortal. Only then can you destroy him. And if I answer wrong, the old man stared into Lakhna's eyes, you will instantly turn to stone. No last words. No second chances. The room grew colder, as if some unseen force had drawn all warmth away. But Lakhna didn't shiver. He looked toward the lamp, its flame flickering like his own fragile hope. "I accept. Please, show me the way to his lair." The old man closed his eyes, muttered a sacred chant under his breath, then drew a spiral on the ground with ash from the incense burner. "Follow the moon's path. 3 days and nights through the golden forest, until you reach the black rock falls. Stand before the cliff with 3 stacked stones, and shout, 'O you who hide your soul, show yourself.' The cave will open. But remember, only speak of riddles. Do not engage in conversation. Do not let him awaken your anger." "I understand." Lakhna bowed 3 times, then stood. "I will await your return," said the old man. "You won't have to wait long. When I return, I won't just be a man seeking his wife. I'll be the one who unlocks justice for the world." Dawn approached. The forest was still damp and cold, but Lakhna's steps burned with purpose. And ahead, deep in the shadows, was a cave where evil bloomed like a deadly flower. For 3 days and nights, Lakhna crossed the golden forest, where sunlight dripped like honey through the leaves, and birds sang in otherworldly tones. But there was no poetry in his heart. Every step tore at him, a memory of Chandrakala's eyes, the last moment before darkness took her. He carried not just pain, but destiny. He was no longer the boy who once felt forgotten by a left-handed water jug. Now, he was the only one who could break the curse even the gods would not touch. When he reached the Black Rock Falls, the sun seemed to fall into the abyss. Moss-covered stones loomed. The waterfall roared like the cries of lost souls. And there, 3 massive stones stacked like a primeval gate time itself dared not disturb. He stood before them, closed his eyes. In his mind, Chandrakala appeared, eyes wet, lips trembling, but dignity intact, like a lotus refusing to wilt. Lakhna shouted, "O you who hide your soul, show yourself." The ground rumbled. The earth split. The 3 stones slowly parted, revealing a dark crevice, black as ink, deep as the underworld. Cold wind rushed out, but Lakhna didn't flinch. He drew his sword, not to fight, but to remind himself, there is no turning back. The deeper he went, the heavier the darkness. The air was thick with blood and ashes. Then, he saw a glow. Not real fire, but a strange radiance emanating from Dambhikasur's body. The demon sat upon a stone dais, surrounded by statues, dozens, maybe hundreds. Stone figures, each frozen in the last expression of their defeat, fear, rage, despair. Lakhna knew, they were once warriors who tried to slay him, now cursed to decorate the triumph of evil. Dambhikasur raised his head. He wasn't surprised. "Ah, another fool who dares tempt fate. Who are you? A lost soldier? Or a mad lover?" Lakhna stood tall, gaze unwavering. "I am the husband of the woman you stole. And I've not come to fight you. I've come to answer your 7 riddles." Dambhikasur paused for a moment, then burst out laughing. His laughter sounded like boulders grinding in a stone mill, echoing through the entire cavern. "That damned old sage again, isn't it? He keeps sending these weak little boys here to test their luck. How many do you think have said those same words before you?" "I don't need to know," Lakhna replied coldly. "Ask your riddle." Dambhikasur squinted. "Interesting. Very well. But before we begin, let me say something." He rose and stepped toward Lakhna, his shadow stretching across the cave like a curtain of darkness, swallowing all light. "Yesterday, I feasted on a man. He was delicious. His skin was tender. His heart fluttered like a frightened bird. His name was Mahendra." Lakhna's heart clenched. "Yes. Your brother. He came before you. Brave. Pitiful. Foolish." Lakhna gripped the hilt of his sword, his lips pressed so tight they bled. But then, a voice echoed in his mind, the old sage's warning. "Do not let him touch your anger." Lakhna took a deep breath and spoke firmly. "I'm not here for stories. Ask." Dambhikasur sneered, then roared. "Then, here is the first riddle." The air in the cave froze. From behind him, a stone altar rose, etched with strange ancient symbols. He spoke loudly. "What becomes smaller when shared, heavier when hidden, is possessed by all, but none wish to reveal it, has no shape, but all can feel it. What am I?" Lakhna closed his eyes. The riddle was not difficult, but the weight of death hung over him like a crushing stone. He opened them and said, "It is fear." Silence. Then, a slight tremor in the earth. The purple flames swirling around Dambhikasur flickered and dimmed slightly. He raised an eyebrow. A tight-lipped smile. Smarter than you look. But 6 more remain. Lakhna didn't smile. He didn't feel triumph. Because he knew, the deeper it went, the less these riddles were about intellect. And more about traps for the soul. Dambhikasur stood motionless for a moment after Lakhna answered correctly. The violet aura around him pulsed faintly, like a dying flame, but it didn't yet worry him. In his blood-red eyes, there was no fear, only amusement. As if, for the first time in centuries, he had found a worthy opponent. Well done, mortal. 1 gate passed. But 6 layers of hell still await you. Lakhna remained silent. He stood with hand on his sword, silently reminding himself. Don't be proud. Don't let emotions rise. Remember why you're here. Dambhikasur spun and waved a hand. A swirl of black smoke materialized into floating stones etched with ancient runes, glowing faintly like moonlight behind clouds. The second riddle, he growled. I can fill a room without taking space. I'm everywhere, but no one can grasp me. I have no shape, no taste. But I can make the lonely weep. What am I? Lakhna froze. This was no trick question, it pierced into the soul's hidden chambers. Where emotions sleep and memories whisper. He thought of those early nights alone after leaving home. No voice, no company. Only light, he whispered. Then raised his voice. The answer is light. Dambhikasur narrowed his eyes. A small crack appeared on the stone wall behind him. Like a door slightly opened. The violet flames around him dimmed further, but his lips curled into a bitter grin. I'm starting to like you. Lakhna didn't respond. He refused to be drawn into the demon's emotional current. Dambhikasur took a few slow steps. His footsteps echoed like a death march on stone. Then he stopped and growled. Third riddle. I dwell in all change. I bring birth and death. I am a silent thief. I flow endlessly, and no one can hold me. What am I? A riddle about flow, and Lakhna knew it instantly. He had lost his father. Watched time steal life from his mother's eyes. He had once been a child unable to hold on to anything he loved. He answered without hesitation. It is time. The cave trembled again. A nearby statue, once just another figure of stone, began to crack. And beneath the crumbling shell, a man emerged, breathing faintly, frozen for years, but still alive. He had been saved. Lakhna gasped. He looked to Dambhikasur, and saw real change. The demon clenched his jaw, snarling. You just freed a soul I imprisoned for 1,000 years. A mistake I made, now your victory. He swept his hand. The fourth riddle appeared. I arrive when hearts are empty. I depart when willpower returns. I kill without a blade. But bring the strongest to their knees. What am I? A dangerous riddle, designed to awaken despair. And Lakhna had once been there. He had knelt beside a stream, screaming in grief when he thought he'd lost his wife. He had once thought of ending it all. He remembered that hollow feeling. As if his soul had been ripped from his chest. It is despair, he said. This time, the cavern shook violently. More statues collapsed, dust clouding the air. One of the violet flames around Dambhikasur extinguished completely, causing him to drop slightly to one knee. He looked up at Lakhna, eyes now edged with caution. You are going too far, little mortal. Do you understand that if you answer all 7 riddles, I will vanish forever? I, the shadow in the hearts of millions. Destroyed by you, a nameless merchant. Lakhna stepped forward, voice calm. You're not a demon. You are the darkness inside every human. But once a person dares to face it, you lose your power. Dambhikasur roared, louder than ever before. Silence. You understand nothing. Lakhna looked him in the eyes. For the first time in his life, without fear. Then ask your next riddle. The purple fire around Dambhikasur now flickered faintly, like embers fighting for one last breath. He stood at the center of the cave, his eyes no longer arrogant, but clouded with fury, caution, and a fear he'd never admit. Lakhna stood steady, still gripping the sword he never swung. Because he knew his true weapon was the stillness of his mind. Dambhikasur sniffed sharply and waved a hand. Ancient symbols lit up on the cavern ceiling like dim stars in a void. His voice rasped, as if dredged from some ancient sorrow. The 5th riddle. I keep people apart. I am born from inferiority, or pride. I make you smile while your soul is breaking. I corrode even the strongest hearts. What am I? Lakhna raised his head and looked straight at him, no hesitation. It is distance. Not of space, but of the soul. The kind that makes people love without speaking, hurt without crying. As soon as the words left his lips, a flash of white light burst forth. Another stone statue cracked. This time, a woman collapsed to the ground, tears falling as she returned to her human form. She whispered thanks unconsciously before fainting. Dambhikasur roared. You dare! You dare to free the ones whose souls I crushed. He lunged forward, claws glowing like burning blades. But Lakhna did not flinch. He didn't even dodge, he merely stepped back half a pace, standing still like a mirror. Dambhikasur froze. He realized, if he struck now, he would violate the one rule he could not break. The riddler must not use force against the one answering. Lakhna exhaled slowly and said, You fear me because I do not fear you. Dambhikasur gritted his teeth. After a long pause, he turned away, hands trembling. Fine. The 6th question. Behind him, the shadows opened up like an invisible abyss. From it came the sound of a baby crying, then laughter, then a long sigh. His voice dropped low and slow, like a chant. I have no name. No one sees me arrive. But all feel me when I leave. I can take everything, love, health, hope. What am I? Lakhna suddenly felt a chill in his hands. This riddle was about loss. He thought of his father, who passed away before ever seeing his son married. He thought of his sister-in-law's eyes that day, not cold, just exhausted. And how he had misunderstood. He remembered the night he knelt in a rain-soaked forest, convinced no one would ever need him again. He exhaled, then softly said, It is separation. Boom. A section of the cave ceiling collapsed, not on anyone, but revealing sunlight from directly above. A warm ray of daylight slipped in like a quiet breath of hope. Dambhikasur was visibly shaken. His arrogance faded. He panted, staggering backward. Each step shattered another ring of violet flame around him, like mirrors breaking apart. He looked at Lakhna, not with hatred, but confusion. As if seeing his former self, a man who once loved, once hurt, once chose darkness after being abandoned. His voice rasped. Do you understand what's happening, mortal? If you answer the final riddle, not only will I vanish, but even the shadows in men's hearts will weaken. That's exactly what I want, Lakhna replied. Silence. Then Dambhikasur raised his hand, and the entire cavern trembled. Then listen well. The final riddle. The last remnants of purple light gathered into a glowing orb. Within it swirled thousands of tormented faces, crying, laughing, screaming, regretting. As if all of Dambhikasur's identities had merged into one. His voice shook the very bones of the cave. I am what humans always avoid. Yet I'm where they return when no path remains. I am the shadow of the soul. Accept me, and you will be free. What am I? Lakhna stood still, his heart beat like a war drum. This was no longer a riddle. It was the ultimate truth. He looked toward the back of the cave, where Chandrakala was imprisoned. He saw her face. Not afraid, but trusting. Not sorrowful, but hopeful. He understood. He stepped forward and spoke, his voice clear and radiant. You are, myself. The entire cave exploded in a soundless roar. Not of noise, but of the soul being cracked open. Dambhikasur's eyes widened. His body trembled. The final screeches that escaped his throat sounded like iron grinding against stone. He screamed. No. You've seen through me. And then, his body began to break apart. Not dissolve, but be released. Light burst forth. The stone statues cracked open. Hundreds of trapped souls took flight like birds returning to the sky. A powerful wind surged through. Then, silence. As if the demon had never existed. At the heart of the cave, Lakhna collapsed to his knees. On the other side, Chandrakala ran to him, threw her arms around him, her tears falling onto his sweat-drenched face. You came back. And so did you. Light poured in from the cave walls like milk from the heavens, cleansing the darkness that had resided there for centuries. No more screaming. No more evil. Only the quiet sobs of Chandrakala, clinging to Lakhna like he might vanish again. Lakhna placed his hand on her hair, feeling the trembling that proved she was real. Her warmth was no illusion. Chandrakala had truly returned. No more demonic serpent within her. No more Dambhikasur looming like a curse. It was over. But it was also the beginning. They stood. Behind them, the stone figures were slowly crumbling, revealing people awakening from slumber that lasted years, decades. Old and young. Faces worn by time. But eyes shining like they'd been born again. Among them, was Mahendra. As his eyes opened, the first thing he saw was his brother standing there, holding his wife's hand. Lakhna, he whispered, voice gravelly. Lakhna grasped his brother's hand tightly, eyes red. I'm sorry, brother. For leaving without understanding. For blaming your wife. For everything. Mahendra said nothing. He simply embraced his younger brother. Not as someone returned from death, but as two souls who had finally discovered the meaning of family. After crossing the abyss of life and loss. On the day they returned, the entire city of Ujjain erupted with emotion. News that Dambhikasur had been destroyed spread faster than the wind. But when people asked who defeated him, the survivors only said, not with a sword, but with a heart, with wisdom, with forgiveness. King Vikramaditya, upon learning that two women, Mahendra's wife and mother, had courageously gone to plead with him for help and thus began this entire journey, stood silent in reverence. When he met Lakhna, the ordinary man, without armor, without armies, who had solved all 7 riddles and freed hundreds of souls, the great king knelt before him, not to honor, but to give thanks. You've shown this land that darkness only wins when people retreat. But when even one soul dares to stand firm, even demons tremble. Lakhna refused rewards. He didn't ask for a title. Only one thing. Please, Your Majesty, allow Chandrakala and me to return to the most peaceful corner of your kingdom. A small home, a garden, and a well with clear water. So I can live out my life as an ordinary man, beside the woman I love. Vikramaditya nodded, without hesitation. And so, on the outskirts of Ujjain, a small house rose, nestled among wildflowers and moss-covered stone steps. People often saw a young couple tending to the garden, cooking meals together, reading quietly under the trees. No one would guess, they were once the heroes of a legendary tale. And whenever a traveler stopped by asking for water, the woman, once a princess, would always lift the jug with both hands, offering it gently with a tender smile. Because she knew, a simple gesture can carry the weight of destiny. And Dambhikasur? Some say he was destroyed. Others believe he was never a monster that existed outside. He was the darkness within each of us. Our fear, our pride, our hatred, our regrets. All of it shaped the demon called Dambhikasur. And every time we choose forgiveness over revenge, courage over escape, truth over denial, we kill him again. With the smallest light, within our hearts. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share one thing this story taught you, and how you'll carry it into your life. Your voice matters. Reading your reflections brings strength, healing, and inspiration to us all. If this story moved your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue crafting stories that awaken the soul. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.